For the longest period of time, if there was any character universally hated by fans, well, actually, there were probably many of those, but this video is about Superboy Prime. What made people loathe Prime was the fact that he was essentially a fictional mouthpiece for fan complaints used by the writers. And he was written as a loud, obnoxious brat who would complain about how everything was better the way he remembered it. But let's take a step back and really get to the meat of the character. It would probably help if we got everyone up to speed first, as not everyone knows the full history of this guy. So, on a world similar to ours, Jerry and Naomi Kent adopt a young boy whom they decide to name Clark. Unfortunately, young Clark was bullied for having the same name as the fictional on his world, Superman. But everything would change for him on one Halloween when Halley's comet passing overhead triggered the young boy's latent Kryptonian abilities. And with the help of the Superman of Earth 1, he learns how to use his powers to stop a tidal wave. When Superman returns to his world, Clark decides to follow him to help him out, saying goodbye to his girlfriend Lori, not knowing that he will never see her again. Despite not having anywhere to return to after the Anti-Monitor destroys his world, Clark helps the assembled heroes and villains to take on the threat. He, along with Alexander Luthor Jr. of Earth 3, witnessed the Superman of Earth 2 deal the final blow to the Anti-Monitor, ending his threat. After the fight, Alex creates a pocket dimension for them, having also saved the Lois Lane of Earth 2. Years pass, and once again, the DC Universe is on the brink of another crisis. Unable to watch any longer and not having faith in the current crop of heroes to save the day, the survivors of the original crisis emerge from their paradise. However, unknown to Superman and Lois, Alex had masterminded the whole affair, using Superboy Prime as his muscle. Once Alex lets go of his leash, Prime confronts the current Superboy Connor Kent over his continued inaction. This leads to a fight breaking out with almost every major superhero team except for the Justice League, and in the middle of the brawl, Prime accidentally knocks off the head of the hero Panther. When baby Wildebeest goes to avenge his mother figure, he gets sliced in half by Prime's heat vision. Superboy Prime's onslaught becomes more and more brutal, killing Bushido and tearing off Risk's arm, until the Flashes, most notably Bart Allen, push him into the Speed Force to stop him. This is a temporary solution, as he soon breaks out, in a tragic display of irony, wearing a costume reminiscent of the Anti-Monitor. He fights Connor for a second time at Alex's tower, and though Connor can't beat him, he uses Prime to destroy the tower, stopping Alex's plan. During the battle for Metropolis, Superboy Prime indiscriminately kills heroes and villains alike until he decides to try for a clean slate by causing a big bang by flying through Oa at light speed. The efforts to stop him cost the lives of 32 Green Lanterns, and the Earth 2 Superman. The Green Lanterns imprison Prime, but the villain Sinestro breaks him out soon after. Now going by Superman Prime, he plays along with Sinestro's schemes and brutally beats Iron Sodom Yat, until the Anti-Monitor is weakened, letting Prime take revenge on him for destroying his Earth. One of the Guardians sacrifices himself to take Prime out of the fight, only for him to emerge as a multiversal threat. Now wearing a black costume similar to the one Superman wore after his resurrection, and having aged up to adulthood, Prime goes on a rampage throughout the multiverse in search of the perfect Earth, destroying Earths 15 and 51. The latter is destroyed while Prime fights the Monarch, ripping open his containment plate and exposing himself to the villain's quantum energies. Prime is recovered by the Time Trapper and unleashed onto the 31st century, the time period of the Legion of Superheroes. Now younger again, Superboy Prime is enraged to find out that history thinks of him as a joke and sets out to become the greatest villain he can be. Uniting all the villains of the 31st century under one banner, Prime attacks the Legion, who call in Superman, two other Legions from two different universes, and resurrect two of Prime's greatest foes, Connor Kent and Bart Allen. It is ultimately revealed that the Time Trapper is a future version of Prime, and when the two are brought face to face, the younger Prime attacks the Trapper, causing him to reset himself. This gives Clark what he always wanted. He gets to return to Earth Prime, with everyone there knowing exactly what he's done. During Blackest Night, a Black Lantern Alex Luthor goes to Earth Prime to attack Prime, whose parents are scared of him, and it's implied he may have done something to his girlfriend Lori. While fighting and losing to a bunch of Black Lanterns whom he killed, Prime attacks the DC Comics offices in an attempt to take them with him. He eventually uses a Black Lantern ring to defeat the Black Lanterns, and Lori shows up to say that they won't bother him anymore. Unfortunately, they lied, as Superboy Prime ends up back on the main Earth. He forms a Legion of Doom with many Teen Titans villains and fights the team, but is defeated by the expanded roster and imprisoned in the Source Wall. Fast forward several years, the DC Universe is once again facing a crisis, this one caused by an evil alternate Batman, and powered by the crises faced by the heroes in the past. Wonder Woman goes to where Infinite Crisis takes place and encounters Superboy Prime. Prime is a lot less angry and just appears tired, going along with the Batman who laughs out of a desire to preserve a semblance of his past. Diana manages to convince him to stand against the Darkest Night, which he does. However, all his past actions have not been forgotten, with both the heroes and villains wary of him, except for Krypto. Superboy Prime fights the Darkest Night and nearly accepts his offer for his own Earth, but turns it down on seeing Krypto, deciding to deal as much damage as he can to the villain as he dies. However, he suddenly wakes up in what appears to be his bedroom, and then he goes out to lunch with Lori. While doing so, he sees a child run out onto the street in front of a car. But he saves the kid by lifting the car over his head, just like Superman. From his inception, Superboy Prime has always been a character defined by the whims of the people behind the scenes. While that certainly applies to every comic book character, it is slightly more obvious in Prime's case. The reason behind his creation? It was felt that the event Crisis on Infinite Earths should have a Superboy, as the event was rebooting the DC Universe, and it would have been appropriate to have a young Clark Kent present, as his adventures were such a memorable part of the era. In essence, Superboy Prime was created as a thematic stand-in for another character who could not be there in person. So, I can't help but feel a sense of dark irony when the stand-in for a symbol of a more innocent time bawls his eyes out about not meaning to do what he did, as his fists are covered in the blood of the woman he just decapitated. It's a powerful scene dripping in tragedy. Except I'm not sure this was meant to be intentional. You see, the hatred for Superboy Prime can be chalked up to a very simple reason. He was inescapable during the 2000s. Much like the Batman Who Laughs, who I feel is Prime's spiritual successor, writers working at DC kept inserting Prime into their work, with the character acting more childish and villainous with each appearance. However, in my opinion, the person most guilty of this is the writer who villainized Superboy Prime in the first place, Geoff Johns. Johns would use Prime as a major antagonist in Sinestro Corps War, Legion of Three Worlds, which was a tie-in to Final Crisis, and even in a tie-in to Blackest Night, which was supposed to redeem the character. While Johns arguably didn't write all versions of Prime after Infinite Crisis, or even the worst version of Prime, most of the time he's the one who kept bringing him back as a villain. Where's my proof? Well, those of you who may be a bit more knowledgeable in your comic history are probably typing in the comments about how I missed one of Prime's appearances. Except, I didn't. I lied. A lie of omission, but a lie nonetheless. Prime actually made an appearance in the 2019 Shazam series, which was also written by Geoff Johns. In this issue, Prime fights the Shazam family, none of whom he has met before, and beats them to a pulp while whining. So, essentially, he's modern Superboy Prime. He's beaten by Shazam and Black Adam combining their magic, even though he was immune to magic before, I guess because the series was ending. This is why I say the scene in Infinite Crisis where Prime accidentally kills Pantha is an unintentional moment of genius. Johns doesn't seem to know exactly what he was attempting to do here beyond the fact that Superboy Prime would make a cool villain. Again, for proof, look at Prime's next scene after he's back from the Speed Force. He brags to Nightwing about how he wasn't even trying to kill the heroes during their last fight, and his plan is to fly into Oa to kill everybody so he's the only one left. And we have another powerful moment where he screams that he'll be Superman as he performs some very un-Superman-like acts. But do you believe that this is unintentional at this point? People hated Prime because he was used as a straw fan to throw their own arguments back at them by the writers. Problem with that, they weren't exactly subtle about it. Despite what I said about John's repeated use of Superboy Prime, the worst possible version of the character comes from the weekly series Countdown. In this, let's just say, very bad story, all Prime does is indiscriminately kill and complain about stuff. While some of it made for great memes, most of it just painted Prime, and by extension the reader, as a screaming man-child having a tantrum when he didn't get what he wanted. You won't create an endearing character by having them act as a proxy for your complaints. I've said a lot about how Superboy Prime was used as a straw man for fan complaints, but here's the thing. Even a straw man's argument can have a partial foundation in the truth. Yes, Prime's complaints were often petty and childish, but these were often real complaints that fans themselves made. Unsubtle as his usage was, Prime forced fans to look into a part of themselves, a part that agreed with this homicidal child screaming about how things were better in the past. I mean, I'm no better. I'm making this video. So that brings us to Prime's redemption. He gains understanding, becomes a better person, and is rewarded for it. A lot of people really like it. I think it's a forced conclusion, and once again, Jeff Johns not realizing what he's doing. It might seem like a nice message in a meta sort of way. This entire era of DC was all about being meta, about how you can always become a better person. But this requires me to forget everything that happened over the years, all the atrocities committed by Superboy Prime, most of them under the writer now penning his redemption. The subtext conveyed here is, hey, you did a lot of bad things, but you did one good thing at the end, and here's everything you always wanted. The cherry on top is the blatant manipulation with crypto, like I wouldn't remember the other times Prime interacted with the Dog of Steel. In the end, I'm torn. Prime acted as an unrepentant villain throughout most of his career, and yet you can almost sympathize with the character. For me at least, his villainous acts far outweigh any good he ever did, and any sympathy I might have had for him evaporates once he starts maliciously killing people. But what do you think? Is Superboy Prime a villain or a victim? Let me know in the comments down below.